I don't think Montana's an outlier here. I mean, I think just about everywhere in the country there's housing shortages. In the faster growing areas, it's come to the point where we have teachers in Montana that either don't take the job or live in a KOA campground because the houses are just too unaffordable. This is occurring because, of course, demand. We got a lot of folks from Texas, got a lot of folks from the coast that are moving into Montana, which would make me think that there would be houses for sale in Texas and in San Francisco and LA and those kind of places, but I'm not hearing about any housing surpluses there. Dr. Young, could you give me at least a little insight as to what the hell's going on and why 1 month we have housing surplus and then 6 months later we have not near enough houses?
Well, on any economic data, particularly on housing, there could be some volatility on the month-to-month movement part. But if one looks at the longer-term trend, what one finds is that in the aftermath of the terrible foreclosure crisis of 15 years ago, home builders, especially the small home builders, really never came back to the market. And consequently, there has been a decade of underproduction across the country in relation to the population growth. So if you are not producing houses while the population is rising, then we have a shortage. But this shortage continued to intensify with each passing year, and consequently, nation as a whole, we estimated that there were about 5 million housing units short. Apartments, single family, you name it, we were short. So that's why we have a housing shortage in Texas, California, Montana, because we have simply not built enough. Now, in relation to the recent trend that you are observing, people from Texas moving into your state, so there was a housing shortage in Texas. So maybe people who are moving to Montana, that is creating the demand in Montana, causing a housing shortage in your area. But people who are leaving Texas, that's a small drop in the bucket compared to the housing shortage that they are currently experiencing.
So, Senator Toomey and I disagree once in a while, but every once in a while we agree too, okay? But one of the things that's obvious to me is the fact that we got a problem. It is having some major impacts on economic growth in the small towns because there's no place for workforce to live. There's no place for entrepreneurs to live. Doing the right thing is important here. We don't want to exacerbate the problem. We want to make it better. Dr. Holtz-Egan said we need a long-term plan. I got 2 minutes left, and I don't want you to spend 2 minutes on the long-term plan, Doctor, but could you give me a little insight of where, this problem will fix itself, but it may take 30 years. I don't know that 30 years is particularly good for businesses that, by the way, have a hard time under the best of circumstances. So could you give me just a little insight into what should be in the long-term plan that actually would result in more houses on the market?
I think that broadly, you want to take the dollars that are being currently devoted to demand subsidies, the long array that Senator Toomey mentioned in his opening, and channel those toward things which would genuinely expand the production, the physical production of housing, including providing, in some cases, the land necessary. I saw something yesterday that the federal government owns 40% of the land in California. Land is the scarce good in the California housing market. They might want to supply some land to the housing market.
What about and so what you're talking about is investing in workforce training? Is that part of the deal?
I don't think we need a big new workforce training program. We have workforce training programs. I think we need to think hard about our immigration strategy and have it work as a tool of economic policy. I'm happy to expand on that at some other time. And I think we had some really promising apprenticeship programs that were started under the previous administration that have been abandoned. These IRAPs, which were very popular and could be deployed across different sectors of the economy. Those I think would be promising ways to go.
Ms. Bailey, in the little time that I have left, from a rural perspective, what would you view the state of housing in rural America, and is it markedly different than in urban America?
I appreciate that question, and it's really important to have a focus on rural America. I think that the issues are related and some but need to be addressed in a different way. because it isn't necessarily the case that we should build a 100 or 200 unit building in rural America. What we need are things like manufactured housing and tools to be able to finance smaller projects to exist throughout a community, so that it blends in with the rest of the community, and we can address the housing need in rural America. And the low-income housing tax credit isn't designed right now to be able to do that. The properties that the low-income housing tax credit fund are usually larger. So we need tools like what President Biden included in his FY23 budget, the $50 billion in supply that would allow for smaller projects to be able to be financed so that they don't rely on the low-income housing tax credit and they don't need as many pieces of the capital stack to be created.
All right, thank you. Thank all three of you. Appreciate you being here, and thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tester.